This is the cabinet that you nominate to not to run the U.S. government to do anything, but to destroy the U.S. government, so that the U.S. government can be fundamentally reimagined as something much more like a unitary, authoritarian, or autocratic, for lack of a better term, system.
Fundamentally reimagined to be more authoritarian. She says, well, first let all of your political enemies out of prison, then get back to me. Stop using the FBI against your political enemies. Stop using the Justice Department to target your political enemies. Then get back to me about authoritarianism. Rachel Maddow, of course. She was wearing an armband there. She was wearing an armband in kind of a Gestapo uniform, riding crop, slapping her hobnailed boot with the riding crop. She had a little bit of a mustache there. Sometimes that's just a lighting issue with her. Maddow. $30 million a year they pay her. It's good to be a Democrat. The propaganda apparatus of the Democrat Party is boundless. Wow, wow, wow. Yes, sir. Well, good Friday to you once again. We continue to be at 888-630-9625 as we traditionally have been. And let me say that there's a lot going on in Washington because President Trump is moving fast, naming his cabinet picks. And the Democrat Party, that means the news media, going bat guano over a number of the picks because how dare you? And you know how they are with the whole how dare you thing. They're quite amazing, these people, very, very corrupt people. But the cabinet fight is already underway because of Democrats. Again, President Trump naming Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I believe a lifelong Democrat from the lifelong Democrat Kennedy family of John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy, his father, Robert F. Kennedy. And that's why he's Robert F. Kennedy Jr., you know. Traditional sort of thing that he's the son of the father. Also, he announced President Trump, North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum at become the Secretary of the Department of Interior. And I think I talked about it once. I met Governor Burgum at the Newsmax studios here in Washington, D.C. Met him in the break room. Truthfully, I didn't even know who he was. We just struck up a conversation and talked for about 10 minutes. He was there with his son, who was a very nice, mellow guy, seemed to be a smart young man. And we talked, and then somebody said, oh, yeah, that was Governor Burgum you were talking to. He said, oh, okay, well, nice guy. Regular guy, North Dakota governor. Very, very wealthy. Very wealthy. He built businesses, and he's, hundreds of millions of dollars. Done very well. Then he decided maybe I should serve my nation. And good stuff. So I like him very much. Former Republican Congressman Doug Collins to be the Secretary, Department of Veterans Affairs, and never met him. I think he's a good guy. Amazing stuff. And it goes on and on. Now the Democrats, they're targeting the heck out of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. They're going crazy, and that means the news media are ganging up on him because that's what the filthy, rotten, corrupt news media does. They do the Democrat Party's work for them. Not at the Washington Times, though. The Washington Times has a photograph of RFK Jr. Waving to a crowd, appears to be a crowd, with a row of American flags next to him that would appear to be at a Donald Trump event. And the caption is, "Enter the skeptic. Enter the skeptic." Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is encouraged to go wild at the Department of Health and Human Services. President-elect Donald Trump said that he will restore these agencies to the traditions of gold standard scientific research. Scientific research? But wait, does that mean we're going to stop funding the Wuhan Institute of Virology and their gain-of-function biological warfare efforts? Is that what you're talking about? Will we restore the fact that there are two genders and not 130 genders, as Democrats say they are in San Francisco, California. Remarkable stuff, I got to say. And also on the front page, their headline, Kennedy gets Trump nod to oversee drugs, food. Well, that's the beginning of a big party, isn't it? He's overseeing the drugs and the food. Who brings the beer? Controversial views worry establishment. The establishment is worried. It's time to slap the establishment around a bit. And I'm not like a food nut or a vaccine nut by any stretch of the imagination. But honestly, I don't think he's a food nut or a vaccine nut. I think, he's a member of the Kennedy family. He's always been involved in political things. And he got involved with vaccines and with food and health. And he's had some pretty good stuff, I've got to say. Now, I got to say, Michael, we opened with a soundbite where he declared, because he was being pressed and pushed and being told, oh, you're anti-vaccine. You want to kill vaccines. You're going to kill children. And then they sent a check to Planned Parenthood, but never mind that. Again, the Washington Times, Seth McLaughlin and Tom Howell Jr. writing today, President-elect Donald Trump announced Thursday that he would nominate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to head the Department of Health and Human Services. Mr. Trump said he is nominating Mr. Kennedy, a former presidential candidate and renowned vaccine skeptic who believes the U.S. food supply is causing an epidemic of childhood diseases, to lead the sprawling department charged with improving the health, safety, and well-being of America. I'm in favor of improving the health, safety, and well-being of America as a general principle. And I'm thrilled to announce Robert F. Kennedy Jr., United States Secretary of Health, Department of Health and Human Services. Mr. Trump said in a statement, for too long, Americans have been crushed by the industrial food complex and drug companies who have engaged in deception, misinformation, and disinformation when it comes to public health. Mr. Kennedy's outspoken questioning of vaccines, concerns about government censorship, and skepticism of government entanglements, including U.S. assistance to Ukraine, have driven his appeal among Mr. Trump's loyal supporters. His skepticism of vaccines gained prominence after the onset of COVID-19, but his views long predate the pandemic. He is a proponent of alternative medicine and healthy eating. Healthy eating is good, I've heard. I read in the paper that healthy eating is good. He recently described Mr. Trump's diet as bad and lamented how the food of the campaign was just poison. That's what he said. Go to the campaign, you got, buffet lines and stuff, and he said this food is just poison. So when Mr. Trump won the election this month, he encouraged Mr. Kennedy to go wild in his new role. Now, let me get to some audio here because Kennedy, again, he is a member of the sainted Kennedy family. Therefore, the orders from on high in the news media have for generations now, for many decades, been hands off the Kennedy family and everybody in it. You can kill a neighborhood girl, Martha Moxley, with a golf club, and the news media just won't talk about it. You can turn your car upside down when missing a bridge at night, Chappaquiddick, Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts, and kill a young woman and then go to brunch and pretend that it never happened, and they'll still run you for president. They've always been hands off with the Kennedy family. And I should say also that in 2008, when Barack Obama was running for president, Barack Obama said that he wanted to pick Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the very same person, for a cabinet post in his cabinet, right? But at the time, it was a heroic thing. Politico, the left-wingers at Politico, a newspaper in Washington, D.C., run by Democrats, the headline was, Obama considers stars for cabinet. Stars, they're going to be stars. And the first star mentioned in the first sentence by Mike Allen was Robert F. Kennedy Jr. President-elect Barack Obama. This is November 11 of 2008 in Politico. President-elect Barack Obama is strongly considering Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to head the Environmental Protection Agency, a cabinet post, Democratic officials told Politico. And they think he's a star. He's the first star they named, and he's a member of the Kennedy family. Now, the soundbite that we opened with, where he said, he's like, well, you're anti-vaccine. And he's being forced to respond to all these false attacks by the Democrats who take what you've said, they change it until it's not what you've said, and then they attack you for what you didn't say. And Robert Kennedy tried to straighten that out.
I'm not going to take away anybody's vaccines. I've never been anti-vaccine. I'm going to make sure scientific safety studies and efficacies are out there, and people can make individual assessments about whether that product is going to be good for them.
That sounds perfectly reasonable to me. More information is good. And I'm not going to take away anybody's vaccine. I'm not going to ban any vaccines. Amazing stuff. President Trump said he would not sign a national abortion ban, yet Democrats say every day he's going to sign a national abortion ban. And he said it again and again, President Trump has, but never mind that. And then there's some audio. We actually pulled this audio a couple of weeks ago of Robert F. Kennedy, and we never got to it because too much fun to get to. But Robert F. Kennedy, he's been collecting statistics and studying and putting together papers and articles and things on the subject of health in the United States of America, the food supply, and in particular children. And he has cited some statistics, and I've got to admit I haven't gone off and done independent research on the things that he said, but I know that he would be fact-checked to death by the fraudulent, corrupt corporate media of Jeff Bezos and that gang that he runs with. But RFK Jr. talking about health in America and children.
We have the sickest children in the world right now. There's nobody in the world that has that. When I was a kid, the autism rate among American children and in 70-year-old men today, in my generation, is 1 in 10,000. In my children's generation, it's 1 in every 34 kids, 1 in every 22 boys.
Now, that is an astonishing statistic that, again, I have not personally investigated. But he says his generation, I believe he's 70 years old, and he says, when I was a kid, and way back when, the autism rate in the United States was 1 in 10,000 for children, and then, they grow up, and he's grown up, 1 in 10,000 for people in his age group. Today, it's 1 in 34 kids, autism. Among boys, it's 1 out of 22 boys. Now, I would say, if that's even remotely related to the truth, that is a crisis. That is an epidemic. That's something we should actually be, sounding the alarm about, and he's trying to sound the alarm. He also talking about diabetes and the increase in disease in the United States.
Diabetes, a typical physician when I was a kid would see 1 case of juvenile diabetes in his lifetime, or a 40 or 50-year career. Today, 1 out of every 3 kids who walk through his office door is diabetic or pre-diabetic. And it's costing us $4.3 trillion a year.
$4.3 trillion a year is a giant number, and that's not even the most important part. The most important part is he says that a physician, he's using the when I was a kid standard, which is fine, but he's 70 years old. And when I was a kid, a physician would see 1 case of juvenile diabetes over the course of his entire career. Now 1 in 3 kids is diabetic. 1 in 34 kids has autism. And we're just whistling past the graveyard like there's nothing going on. Even if he's blowing these numbers out of proportion, it's completely crazy. Now, he's talking about dyes in foods and our breakfast cereals and Cheetos and all these delicious foods, Cheez-Its and great stuff.
In Europe, the same companies are producing the same products, but they're using natural coloring. But here they can get away with it. We have about almost 1,000 chemicals that are in our food that are either outright banned in Europe or actively discouraged. So you wouldn't be able to buy this kind of stuff in Europe. You ask about why it's so cheap, why it's so ubiquitous. It's because we subsidize the worst foods. We subsidize it with about 70% of our food stamp program is to processed foods, which are all poison.
Which are all poison, and they are or they're not. I've been eating them a long time. I feel okay, I feel pretty good. I feel fine. I feel fine. I'm not dead. And at the same time, you got the Democrats and the media, but I repeat myself, attacking him with all of these outrageous claims like this one from AOC, who claims everybody's going to get polio because he's going to ban all vaccines, which is just a series of fatuous lies rolled into one sentence.
You have a baby, and anywhere in the world, protecting against polio, against measles, against very serious communicable diseases that, we would be talking about going back to the 1700s, 1800s. This is serious.
Yeah, and the idiot anchor agreeing. Yeah, Robert F. Kennedy of the Kennedy family is going to take us back to the 1700s. Right. They lie about everything. She may be too dumb to know whether it's true or not. She, when you see her, order a vodka martini, very dry, with a twist. Fascinating stuff. But I tell you what, again, if these numbers are even remotely related to reality, then it's something we should be talking about out loud. But the Democrat Party, All right, let's go to, they just attack everybody. Let's go to the phones. Let's go to Mike, calling from Ocean View, Delaware, which sounds beautiful, doesn't it? Mike, you're on the Chris Plant Show. Mike in Ocean View, Delaware, viewing the ocean. He might be busy viewing the ocean. Did you hear the ocean back there? I just heard it in a flash. I think Mike's phone must have autism or diabetes or something. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Let's go to Mike. It's another Mike. Michael calling from Lake Ridge, Virginia. Michael, you're on the Chris Plant Show.
Hi, good morning. The number with autism, the reason why more people are diagnosed is because of the awareness and being able to people who are on the spectrum. So that's why the increase of the amount of people are on it. I don't know if it's 1 in 34, but my son has autism, and he graduated high school early and completely functional, but he's somewhere on the spectrum. But the one thing I want to know about RFK Jr. is, what is he going to do when he's in office to deal with all the suffering because Donald Trump is president of the United States again? And people are really suffering, and it's ridiculous to me, but I see it. I see the breakdown in families and relationships.
Yeah. Well, that's a fun question, actually. Keep your eyes peeled for the Beaver Moon tonight. The Jerry Mathers Moon, Larry. The Jerry Mathers Moon. That's tonight. It's going to be a big one. In March, we have the Tony Dow Moon. Tony Dow Moon. Now, we were just speaking to Michael, and I apologize, Michael. The clock ran me out of time when I was talking to you there, as we were trying to get Mike, who is in Ocean View, but never mind that. And Michael said, well, the autism question, because RFK Jr. is out there saying he's been studying that when he was a kid, the autism rate was 1 in 10,000. And he says now it's 1 in 34. And among boys, it's 1 out of 22 with autism. That would seem to be a significant statistical shift. And Michael was saying, well, a big part of that, and he's saying it's a matter of diagnoses. And that 70 years ago, or 60 years ago, when RFK Jr. was a kid, they weren't diagnosing people with autism. Now we are. And now it's on a spectrum. And so maybe if you're fidgety in class, you might be diagnosed, and there are probably more people being diagnosed than ought to be. But still, I've got to say, and I explained earlier, I hadn't had a chance to investigate the numbers that he's putting out there. He is a Democrat, so ought to take a look at the numbers that he's putting out there. But going from 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 34 and 1 in 22 boys, that would seem to be a rather dramatic shift. If it really is just the diagnoses, then, if it's definitional to a large degree, then that should be established. And I'd be fine with that if that's if that's really what it is. The problem is we can't just go around trusting our government institutions to tell the truth about these things, and to they just want another $1 billion for another study that's going to take another 5 years, and they're all going to buy their beach houses with and Anthony Fauci spends $15 million on security. Actually, we, the taxpayers, spent $15 million on security for Anthony Fauci after he left the government. But never minding that, we'll go. And I will say, Michael, I believe, and Michael Piercy and I talked about this actually before we talked about it on the air, that to a large degree it may be a matter of how it's diagnosed now versus how it was diagnosed or not diagnosed then. But the numbers, the disparities are so extraordinary that would be something. And also RFK Jr. says that, what does he say, that 40% of kids today have one chronic disease or another that they're dealing with. And if that's true, 40% of kids, I got to say, growing up, there weren't a lot of kids where I was that were growing up with chronic diseases. I'm one of 6 brothers. And statistically, if we had these kind of statistics back then my household should have been affected by this. 6 boys in one household. But what do I know? Amazing stuff. All right, now let's go to some more audio, Michael, because I played an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez cut on MSDNC saying, "Oh, come on, vaccines," like he's going to come in and have the power to ban all vaccines or something, when he said, and I just played the audio for you, said he's not anti-vaccine. He's not looking at taking away anybody's vaccines. He just wants more information and people to be more well-informed, and we need to investigate the effects of vaccines. We're going to be injecting them into the bloodstreams of children and adults, and the Wuhan Red Death with the mandated vaccinations, the vaccines that had not been put through the usual traps by the Food and Drug Administration, but were fast-tracked, and we're all doing them. And we've got long COVID, and how is that involved with the vaccines? These are legitimate questions, and they're scientific questions, but the party of 137 genders probably shouldn't be in charge of science. The party of shaving their heads and swearing off of sex and wearing blue wristbands because Donald Trump was elected probably shouldn't be in charge of anything. But AOC, because AOC on MSDNC, she naturally, everything has to be politicized, from the weather and the climate to gender to absolutely everything is politicized by the left all the time. And AOC attacking, and it's like RFK Jr. is suddenly a Republican. He's going to work in a Republican administration. That doesn't, and he's supporting President Trump, but that doesn't make Robert F. Kennedy Jr. a Republican by any stretch.
If you're a Republican that voted for Donald Trump, you believe in his agenda, something that is broadly popular among Republicans and Democrats are community health centers. Mm-hmm. If you live in a rural area and there's not a hospital very close to you, but there is a community center closer to you, it could be decimated under Robert F. Kennedy.
Based on what? That is complete fiction. And the demented, racist, anti-Semite, homophobe, Joy Reid, is the one agreeing enthusiastically. Did she shave her head? She should. She's got that freak show thing going, but never mind that. And Joy Reid, who is an extremist and a mental case, and she needs, some kind of a clinic for mental health. So wait a minute. RFK Jr., the lifelong Democrat, Kennedy family, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is going to destroy community health centers. And you Republicans voted for this. It was never a topic of discussion anywhere, at any point, on anyone's part. But this is the propaganda, the BS, the misinformation and disinformation that mental cases like AOC spew with her tiny little squirrel brain. And isn't she amazing? By the way, did you see yesterday she stopped using pronouns? It was on her Twitter, her X file. She took down her she, her pronouns, which makes her a homophobe. How homophobic can you be? Why didn't Joy Reid ask her about that? AOC took down her pronouns. What's the matter with you, racist? Amazing stuff. Speaking of her peanut brain, Russia, Newsweek magazine has a story. Russia, Vladimir Putin's communist, he's a communist guy, and he's running Russia. He's a warmongering lunatic. Russia says Peanut the squirrel's death is, quote, reminiscent of U.S. foreign policy. That's what Russia is saying then. The Peanut the squirrel, the Democrats, they launched a raid with 10 men, might have been some women too, raiding the house of the guy who had Peanut the squirrel in online videos. And they took the squirrel and they murdered it. They killed it. And now the death of an internet famous pet squirrel, highlighting the problems with American foreign policy, according to a prominent Russian official. Peanut was seized from the home of its owner, Mark Longo, in late October and subsequently euthanized. They killed it with a ball-peen hammer. It was terrible. Then they ran it over with a car. Euthanized by the state of New York Environmental Conservation Department because somebody narked him out and said, you're not, because they're all over the internet with their pet squirrel, saying you're not allowed to own a wild animal in your house. You can own it out on your property, but not in your house. So they raided the house. They grabbed the squirrel, said, oh, no, the squirrel bit me. So they killed the squirrel and bashed its head in to see if it had rabies because they just can't leave an internet squirrel alone. The squirrel had been saved by the nice people. But now Russia says that the state rushing in, grabbing the squirrel and killing it is reminiscent of U.S. foreign policy. I'm sorry, it says Russia that launched wars in Korea, in Vietnam, murdered, conquered country after country, enslaved hundreds of millions of people. And, of course, they murdered, 30 million of their own people. So maybe you guys should smell yourselves, just saying over there. But we got that going, Peanut the squirrel. Isn't that amazing? All right, now let's get back to Peanut the squirrel and American foreign policy. Let's get back to Joyless Reid and AOC on MSDNC talking about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's going to kill every community health center in America. Complete fiction, disinformation. They should be arrested and, under Hillary Clinton's rules, charged with crimes and probably put into the gulags. Because the left is here. They're literally, Hillary Clinton's talking about putting people in jail for speech crimes because they're fascists. That's why they call everybody else fascist. But never mind all that. So here's AOC and Joyless Reid. And they're attacking Robert F. Kennedy. But Joyless Reid decides to jump in and attack Tulsi Gabbard, too. Now, again, these are Democrats. Robert F. Kennedy, lifelong Democrat, obviously. Tulsi Gabbard, lifelong Democrat. Democrat, member of the House of Representatives from Hawaii. And a member of the United States Army, an Army officer that's actually served in combat zones, unlike Tim Walz. And she's a lieutenant colonel in the Army. But listen to this as AOC is, oh no, Robert F. Kennedy, a lifelong Democrat of the Kennedy family, is going to destroy health in America because he wants to question toxic foods and dyes and why we have an epidemic of childhood diseases and so on. So they want to stop that, right? AOC wants to not investigate diabetes and increases in diabetes, increases in autism. I know that because she's fighting against anybody that does want to do that. And then Joy Reid jumps in and attacks Tulsi Gabbard, who is a woman of color, a Democrat. She just did declare herself to be a Republican because, like Ronald Reagan, the Democrat Party has left her all right? She didn't so much leave the Democrat Party as the Democrat Party left her, but this is what it sounded like on Joyless Reed.
We're talking about the potential decimation of community health centers.
And
No,
we haven't even gotten to Tulsi Gabbard potentially having access to national security information. And Russia loves it, loves her.
And Russia loves it, loves her. Listen to these psychotics. These people have very major mental issues. They literally do. The Democrats have been telling us for years that we have a mental health crisis in the United States. I never really believed that until fairly recently, and now I believe it. And the Democrats knew it all along because everybody they hang out with is mentally ill. So naturally, they knew about this ahead of us, and they themselves are mentally ill. Just amazing. Now, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., again, extraordinary. And why does she attack Tulsi Gabbard? Russia loves her. She's a threat to national security. She's a lieutenant colonel in the Army. She's a former Democrat member of the House of Representatives. Until she was terrorized and threatened and driven out of the Democrat Party, she declared herself to be an independent for a while and quite recently said, well, now I'm a Republican. You may recall Hillary Diane Rodham Clinton also indicted Tulsi Gabbard years ago now as a Russian spy of some kind.
I think they've got their eye on somebody who's currently in the Democratic primary. She's a favorite of the Russians. Yeah, she's a Russian asset. I mean, totally.
Talking about Tulsi Gabbard, who was then a Democrat member of the House of Representatives and a U.S. Army officer. Isn't she amazing? Just extraordinary stuff. Boy, oh boy. I am telling you. And you got to go after her because she's Tulsi Gabbard. And President Trump has nominated her to be the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. So naturally, the left is going to have to destroy her now because that's what the filth do. That's who they are. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. founded Waterkeeper Alliance, an environmental group about clean water. It's the world's largest clean water advocacy group. He founded the Children's Health Defense. That's what it's called, Children's Health Defense, to address childhood chronic diseases. And they're fighting against him. They're trying to destroy him now. He was named Time Magazine's Hero for the Planet. He was Time Magazine's Hero for the Planet. That's better than Man of the Year, I think. He, of course, went to Harvard because all the Kennedys go to Harvard. I think they have a building, and they've got a school named after him there. He went to the London School of Economics. He went to UVA for his law degree and Pace University for another law degree, probably LLM, right? Like that. In 2008, Barack Obama wanted RFK Jr. to head the EPA, and the news media called him a star when Obama wanted to name him to a post. He says now he wants to make America healthy again, and he's got an agenda to combat the chronic disease epidemic, eliminate toxins from food. AOC's against all this now. The Democrats are against all this because they've declared him to not be a Democrat anymore. So like the filth that they are, they must attack everybody. So eliminate toxins from food, water, and air. Democrats now want more toxins in food, water, and air because if you're fighting against it, they're fighting against you. He wants to support sustainable farming and reduce chemical usage in growing crops and so on. Preserve and restore natural ecosystems. I thought Democrats were in favor of all these things, but they're not anymore. Ensure regulatory agencies act in the public interest. You can't have that. That'd ruin everything, wouldn't it? Man, oh man. HHS oversees 13 agencies, the FDA, the CDC, some oversight of Medicare, Medicaid, and the Affordable Care Act. That's Obamacare. Has a $2 trillion budget, but over the course of years. Now, tell me, could the fate of America's children be tied to our fate as a nation? I think so. Much like the Democrat abortionists and the lives of unborn, helpless little babies in the womb, the left seems determined to snuff out everything else. But Preborn, a great organization, Preborn, stands as a beacon of light and hope for the most defenseless among us, preborn babies, unborn babies. Every day, Preborn's network of clinics helps to rescue, on average, more than 200 unborn babies, while surrounding the expectant mothers with love and with God, offering free ultrasounds, witnessing the miracle of life growing inside of them. Listen, it helps mothers to decide to choose life. So will you please join Preborn in helping to protect the least among us, the most helpless among us? For just $28, you can sponsor an ultrasound to give a mother a chance to choose life. For a baby, for herself, an ultrasound can double a baby's life at living a long and happy and prosperous life. To donate securely, all you have to do is dial pound 250. Dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's all you have to do. Or you can go online to preborn.com/plant. That's me, preborn.com/PLANTE. Thank you in advance. So now they must destroy a member of the Kennedy family. The Democrat Party, they've gone full Sirhan. They're guns blazing, going after RFK Jr., and I'm not done yet because they're not done yet. A fun stat that's making the rounds on the internet. Our friend Kevin Tober sent it over here. Democrats have not won a presidential election without a Biden on the ticket since 1996. That's a fun and strange stat that had not occurred to me because Obama with Biden, right, in 08 and 12. And before that, you had Bush and 2 terms. And you got to go back to Clinton before the Democrats won a presidential election without a Biden on the ticket. And of course, pretty amazing stuff. And they dropped Biden off the ticket this year, and look what happened. Woo. That's pretty funny. That's good stuff. All right, we're not done yet because the news media, they bring doctors on. They got all this crazy talk. Now, he's going to destroy, what's he going to destroy? Community health centers. They're going to be decimated. Where did you, what orifice did you pull that out of? I mean, that is quite extraordinary. And then they immediately turn and start attacking Tulsi Gabbard and call her a threat to the Republic. Isn't that amazing? And to national security. And she's a Russian. They make these things up. Amazing. And the Guardian's headline, RFK Jr. condemned as a clear and present danger. He's condemned as a clear and present danger by left-wingers after the Trump nomination. He was fine before the Trump nomination.